Hey guys, following on from last week's video about improving VO2 max, we're going to go into how to improve your functional threshold power, or your functional threshold there. So the definition of your functional threshold is the maximum intensity that you can hold for 45 to 60 minutes. So it's when lactic acid entry into the muscles exactly beats our body's ability to remove it out. So the way we can think of this as your VO2 max, all right? This is just a scale. Over here is 100% VO2 max, over here is 0, 50, 70, 80, 90, etc. All right, so this is your VO2 max. So let's just say we're at a VO2 max is 60, just so we can. All right. Now, nobody can hold 100% VO2 max. It's not physiologically possible, or we can't hold it for more than about 5 minutes. Okay. So what your functional threshold is, as I said, it's what you can hold for 45 to 60 minutes. So it's more your race pace sort of intensity. You can go above your threshold, but as soon as you do, we're getting an exponential increase in lactic acid. So at our threshold, lactic acid entry equals removal. So we're at a nice, comfortably hard sort of steady state. When we increase that intensity just slightly, our body's ability to tolerate and clear that lactic acid doesn't change. So we get an exponential increase in lactic acid because our body's producing more than we can clear it out. So for the average individual, their threshold is at 70% of their VO2 max. So they can hold, if their VO2 max is 60, they can hold 70% of 60 for 45 to 60 minutes. The elite guys can hold 88 to 94%. All right, so somewhere around here, I'll line up at 90% here. So 88 to 94%. All right, so that's pretty significant. Yeah, that's up to sort of 24% more energy that they can get for a long period of time. All right. So the challenge for physiology and for training is that one, we want to increase this VO2 max, get that from 60 to 70. Revisit the video last week to learn how to do that. But then the next challenge is that we want to push this 70% of VO2 max that we can functionally hold right up to that 90%. Because if we can use all of that energy, which is 90%, compared to only using that much energy, it's a 20-24% improvement there. So that's what your functional threshold is. I'm going to jump over to the computer now, show you a few case studies of real life lactate analysis and that, and show you how we can actually improve this. All right, guys, so this is some real life data from an individual who came in a couple of months ago. And what we're looking at here is the graph of her heart rate, lactate, and power. All right, so just as a bit of background physiology, resting lactate is between 1 to 2 millimoles per litre of blood, or just less than 2 millimoles per litre of blood, okay? So your endurance zone is characterised by from 56% of your VO2 max up until the point just before you begin producing lactic acid above resting. So we know that resting is 1 to 2 or below 2. So we're looking at when it goes just before it goes above 2. So for this individual, as you can see here, 150 watts, we're sitting at 1.8 lactate at a heart rate of 139, all right? So the next wattage is up to 180 with 2.6 lactate. So that's above 2, so that's above resting. So that's the transition between the endurance zone and the threshold zone. So that 150 watts, 1.8, if we want to get super specific, I'll see if the data's good, and it's pretty good there. What we're looking at here, this is basically the ventilation divided by, so how much air you're breathing in divided by the oxygen consumption out of that air. Okay, when this becomes non-linear, so as you said, or when we see a non-linear increase in ventilation, or when this graph goes from being quite straight to a sudden curve, we know we're starting to produce lactic acid here. So that's 12 minutes in, which works out to be a heart rate of 138. So let's have a look back at lactate, 139, perfect, it works out perfectly. So 139 is the magic number for this athlete as in top end of their endurance zone. So that endurance zone, that's all about VO2 max. So for training functional threshold, we want to go into that next zone. And the next zone is defined as the intensity at which we are starting to produce lactic acid above resting, right up until our body hits its maximum capacity, or when lactic acid entry equals that lactic acid removal. Now, for this individual, their threshold, it spiked up quite quickly. So Traditionally, they say that 4 millimoles of lactate is where your threshold is. It does vary on individuals depending on how well their body is buffering that lactic acid. And when I say buffering, I mean they can dump bicarbonate into the blood to bring that pH back up. If you remember back from last week's video, the hydrogen ion or the hydrogen component of the lactic acid reduces the pH, makes it more acidic. But what the body does to combat that is it dumps a thing called bicarbonate, and bicarbonate has a high pH, so it brings it back up again. So the way we resist it is that the pH is coming down, and then the bicarbonate brings it back up again. So it does vary from 4 millimoles, but that's about the average. So as you can see here, so for threshold, we want to be working above resting lactate, which that's 1.8 here. So we're looking at 160 watts up until, after 180 watts there in a bit of strife. So their exact threshold will be this point here, I think, 16 minutes in. Heart rate 158, just at the end of that 180 watts there. So they really do struggle as soon as they push above that wattage. So we're looking, for this individual, it would be between 160 watts and 190 watts. So to be this sort of period here, where it's above 2, and it's not obviously up around 15 here. Maybe not the best graph to look at because there is such a large spike, and what we found with this athlete was that they needed to do more threshold work to delay this exponential increase. But basically, threshold training or improving your functional threshold, getting that from 70% up to 90%. We want to do a lot of training in this zone here where we are producing it above resting. It's not ridiculous. It's not up here at 15, but we're above the resting, but we're still able to hold that for long intervals. So the long intervals can be 10, 20 minutes, even up to an hour. We know the threshold is how hard we can go for an hour, so we can do it for up to an hour. And what that does is it improves our body's ability to tolerate lactic acid, so literally just to put up with it. But it also helps our body's ability to clear it out. And the way, as I said before, the way that we clear it out is through the body dumping bicarbonate and also oxygen metabolizing that hydrogen as well. All right, so if you're looking to improve this, 2 ways you can do it. One is to hold that threshold zone, so this sort of period here for a long time, and with a 1 to 2 a 2 to 1 work to rest ratio. So if you do 20 minutes hard, you want to have about 10 minutes rest. And the rest can be a float because we don't care if lactic acid's in the body. That's the idea of this zone and this session. So you can go hard for 20 minutes, and so let's say you go 20 minutes at, 3:30 pace. That happens to be your top end threshold for the run. Then you can do a float back to 5:30 pace or something like that. If you want to have complete rest, that's fine. But for this session, it's not too important to have a full recovery because all we want to do is get lactic acid in the body, but also maintain the quality of the session there. So you're looking at a 2 to 1 or half the rest. And you can also do anaerobic stuff. So the anaerobic stuff is when you're doing really short stuff. So you're looking at 30-second efforts where you're going maximal for 30 seconds and you might have a minute recovery. So it's more like a 1 to 2 or more. So it's 30 on, it's 60 off. Sometimes you might even do like 20 seconds on and a minute off, so a 1 to 3. But basically you want to be going as hard as you can, having a longer recovery, flooding yourself full of lactic acid, but then maintaining the intensity there. That's really good for the top end guys who already have a VO2 max of 70, 75 and above. I'd say 95% of the people listening here will benefit most just from doing that long interval training, 10, 20, 60 minutes in this threshold zone here with half the rest, and that's going to be enough to get that 70% up to that 90%, 94%, whatever it is, which is going to see you obviously a 20 to 24% improvement in performance if you're going from average up to where those elite guys are. And just because the elite guys are at 88 to 94%, that doesn't mean that you can't get to 88 to 94% of whatever your VO2 max is. It might not be 80, 85 or anywhere near the elites, but if your VO2 max is 60 or 40 or 50, whatever it is, you should be able to get that up to 88 to 94%, your threshold. So shorter video today, guys. Hope that makes sense. Post any questions below. But look, long story short, most guys have a very good threshold because they are already training in this zone quite a lot. But if you want to improve that functional threshold, get that close to 100% VO2 max, this is how we do it. Shoot any questions below. I'll get back to them as soon as I can. Cheers. Bye.